All right, now we're talking about the Jewish people coming down into Egypt. Actually, it began last week. Last week it already told us about the 12 sons of Yaakov that came down into Egypt together with their father Yaakov, and they met Yosef down there. Where we go? Wonderful. Eile Shmot, these are the names, Bnei Israel, of the Jewish people. Bnei Israel means the sons of Israel. They're the sons of Yaakov. These are the names of the sons of Yaakov. Haboim Mitzrayim, that came to Egypt. Eis Yaakov, namely, who is it? Yaakov, each person with his household. Rashi. Rashi is Rabbi Shlomo Yitzchaki. He lived like 900 years ago. Avalpi Shomana B'Chaim, even though that the sons of Jacob were all counted when they were alive, namely in last week's Torah portion, Chazar Umanan B'Misasim. Nevertheless, he counts them all after they all died. What do you mean after they all died? Because the story here starts off when the Jewish people are already beginning the exile. Here it says, here, Bnei, I'm sorry. Vayamas Yosef v'kol echad, that Yosef died. This is the sixth sentence. We're on the first sentence. Yosef died and all of his brothers and that whole entire generation. So really the story starts off after they were all dead. So why count them again? Not only that, we already know their names. We already knew it was written a lot of times with the names of the tribes. So Rashi says the reason it keeps repeating their names, even though they were all counted when they were still alive, and with their names, right? Reuven and Shimon, Chazar Amanan b'Meisasim. Nevertheless, it repeats again their names after they're dead. They're already dead. Hodia Chivasam, to let you know how dear they are to God. I mean, who's writing this? This is God writing this. Shenim Shelo the Kochavim. They are something like the stars. Shemotziim u Machnisan b'Mispar u b'Shmotam. That they are brought out and they go away with their names. In other words, each star has a name to it. I guess the earlier astronomers, I guess maybe the astrologers also, but the astronomers, they gave them all the stars, all had names to them. Like it says, and it says also, Hamotzi Mispar Tzivaom, the Kulam B'Shem Yikra in Isaiah. The stars are numbered, and each one has a name. Very interesting. So the same thing with the Jews. The purpose of the Jews is to illuminate the darkness of this terrible exile. And so therefore they're all counted, they're all important. Balaturim. These are the names of the Jewish people. Shmos Bnei Yisrael Ha-Boim. Look at the first letters here. This is the letters of Shivya, enslavement. Shivya, enslavement. Even when the Jewish people were enslaved in Egypt, Shemot Bnei Israel lo shinu. I'm sorry, B'Shivya, Shemot Bnei Israel lo shinu shemotam. Nevertheless, the name of the Jewish people would not change. They didn't change. That because of four things, Nigalu Mitzrayim. There were four merits that the Jewish people had that they were taken out of Egypt. Of course, they were taken out of Egypt anyway because God promised that to Abraham. But there were four merits. First of all, it says that God shortened the time. They were supposed to be there for 400 years, and they were only there for 210 years. So God says he hurried up the Kates. Kates means the end, but Kates is also the gematria the numerical value of 190. So 190 years was taken off of the original sentence. So they were supposed to be there for 400 years, and they were only there for 210. Bishvil shalosh shinot shmon. There were four, but nevertheless they had four merits why they were taken out, or why they were taken out earlier. Because first of all, they didn't change their names. Vagam Kain also, these are the vav ve'ela. This adds on to what we said before. What we said before, last week's Torah portion. It says that Yosef died, and they put him into an ark in Egypt, right? Ark, that's what it says. That's how we ended last week's Torah portion. Ve'elishmos. These are the names. These are the names that God commanded them that they shouldn't change their names, and they kept these same names. Yosef said, even though that, what's this got to do with Yosef dying? Because Yosef said, even though that Paro changed my name and he called me Tzafnat Paneach, nevertheless, you don't change your names. The Jewish people, Yisrael Haboim, what does it say here? Elish Moben Israel, Yisrael Haboim. These Yisrael Haboim, this is the first and the last letters of Mila, Brit Mila, Yisrael, Mem, Yud, Lamed. Mila is circumcision. Et Yaakov, Ish Ubeito Bo. What does it say? Et Yaakov, Ish Ubeito. These are the last letters. Yes, Yaakov. As Yaakov Ish, these are the last letters of Shabbat. To tell you that the Jewish people, when they were in Egypt, they also kept the Shabbat, and they kept the Bris Milah, and that they kept that in Egypt. Because of that, they were redeemed. In other words, they had a lot of merits there also. The Sforno. Oh. These are the names that are mentioned that are here, and you have to know that we should advertise their names, because each and every one of them was fitting and was righteous, that he was worthy of his own name. That shows on his own individual nature. Like Reuven, it said, was because she said, now I have seen. And like we learn in Chassidut also, Reuven means seeing God, Shimon means hearing God. These are the names that they had. These were illuminators. And because they were there, they stopped the generation from sinning. But as soon as they died, then there weren't righteous people between them, among them so much. So therefore, there weren't some people that were important in their eyes to God or to other men. These were the names of the Jewish people. These are the ones. But afterwards, it sort of faded away. Here's the Kli Ykar, says a very interesting thing. Let's see, where is this? 1 minute. 1 minute. Here it is. No. It says that they are compared to the stars. There's a little bit of a hint which it says a bo'im. Now, this is not the one I wanted to do. 1 second. There's one over here where he talks about the names of them. Maybe the first one. Let's try this. Ve'elu shmos b'nei Yisrael. Ve'elu. Gam Omer also says that from the beginning, when they came in, this was the language. This was what they were called. And afterwards, each and every person brought. No, this is not the one I wanted to do either. I'm sorry. 1 second. 1 minute. 1 minute. 1 minute. Please, I'm sorry. I prepared this, but. All right. Anyway, this is what's the number? This is to tell you how important. Why do you have to count the Jews? To tell you how important they are. So therefore, they're each and every one of his numbered. And that's like a tzaddik, even after he dies, it says, Nodi siparta ata, simati matiba nodecha, halo besifrotecha. It says that each one of their tears are put and counted. This is talking about the rabbis say on a person that if you cry for a good, a righteous person, but nevertheless it says that that the person himself the work that the person did in his whole life, this is a thing that is preserved forever from Hashem. I'm sorry, I prepared this one and I lost the one that I wanted to do. He talked about each and every one. Here's another maforshim that they say. Ish ubeito, that went into Egypt, was the man and his house. That's God. Ish is God, went into Egypt also. And beito, that's the God's heavenly court. It says they all went down. Why do they have to go? Because it says that God promised that he would take them out of Egypt, and he also promised that he would the Egyptians would pay for it. So therefore, God came down with them to let them out, and his Beit Din, his judicial court. God also went down with the Jews into Egypt to make sure that they got punished. The Egyptians got punished. Why does it say the names of the Jewish people that came into Egypt? Doesn't it already say the names? It already said the names of them, but it's coming to tell you that as soon as Yosef died, that the Egyptians didn't put on them any taxes. Before he died, they didn't put on any taxes. And once Yosef died, it is just as though today they began entering into Egypt, and as they entered into slavery. All right. Here we have the names of the different tribes. Reuven, Shimon, Levi, Yehuda. Each one is named off. Of course, we already know that. Let's look at the Kli Ykar. Well, maybe this is what I wanted. Why does it have to say, oh, here it is. This is the one I wanted. Reuven, Shimon, etc. Why does it have to say all these names? It says, in the merit of four things, our forefathers were redeemed from Egypt. There's a lot of different midrashim that say different merits that the Jewish people had that got them out of Egypt. One of them is they didn't change their names. They didn't change their language. And also that they didn't intermarry. And there wasn't also any licentiousness among the Jews themselves. And people did not complain against God. The reason is like this, like it says in Yalkut, in one of the Midrashim, that each one of the names of the tribes is called because of the redemption. Reuven is Ro Ra'iti Etani. God said, I certainly saw the suffering of the Jews. Shimon is because Vayishma Elokim, that God heard their cries, and all the other names of all the tribes, etc. And it goes through it in the Midrash. According to this, if they would have changed their names, so they wouldn't have the same merit of the redemption, and they wouldn't be fitting to redeem. What are you getting out because of your name? Because of Reuven. It says, my name is not Reuven. It's Rumpel or something. Who knows? The different name. So they wouldn't have the merit. Okay, so let's say they kept their names, but they just changed their language. But if they would have changed their names that indicate on their future redemption, then, and if they would call a new name, then they wouldn't have any indication that they were going to be redeemed. They would be forget the whole idea of redemption. Also, they didn't change their name. If they would have changed their language, and they would have kept the same name. So let's say he kept the name Reuven, because God will see us and he'll take us out. But if they change their language, so the word Reuven wouldn't mean the same thing. Lo Yeshemon, the name wouldn't be showing on the redemption. Only in Hebrew does that name show that God saw us and saw our difficulties, and Shimon because God heard our cries. But if it would have been another language, so they wouldn't have known, and it wouldn't indicate anything about the future redemption. That's the Kli Ykar. Yisachar, Zvulun, Binyamin, Dan, Naphtali, Gad, Vasher. These are the different names of the tribes. Vayikal Nefesh Yotzei Yerech Yaakov. All the souls that came out of Yaakov were 70 souls. Now, usually the question is asked, what do you mean 70? There were 70 people that went down into Egypt, including Yaakov. Okay, Yosef, it's right, and Yosef was also one of them. That was, right, there was 70, it seems from here there was 70, and Yosef was separate from them. It says, Rashi says, Hello, hu bana b'yibachlal shidim. Yaakov and his sons were part of the 70, right? Like you said before. What does this come to tell us? Don't we know that Yaakov and his sons were all in Egypt? Right, Mitzrayim, that they were in Egypt. To tell you Yosef, to tell you the righteousness of Yosef. Who Yosef Arah? This is the same Yosef that was the shepherd, that shepherded his father. Who Yosef Shoyab Mitzrayim? This is the same Yosef that became a king and stayed in his righteousness. Now, this is a pretty amazing thing, actually, when you think about it. I just heard today, especially you can see it now, and with this Corona thing. We flew to the Rebbe, and this was for Tishrei, and there was one of the stewardesses there that she just went berserk. You had to have a mask on your face, and so she went around waking people up. That, like, if they were sleeping, they had to have the mask not on their nose also. So a person that was asleep, and if it fell down like just over there, she would wake them up, put them on their nose. She just went. You saw what a little bit of power does to a person. Take a person who is, can be a totally worthless, person that has not developed his personality at all, and is just like a real true loser in every aspect. You give him a little bit of power, and all of a sudden he becomes a monster, a monster. And there can be also sometimes people that can be the nicest people in the world, but all of a sudden you appoint them to some position, and they realize that they. So Yosef, he was it was the king of all of Egypt, and he also had a good reason to take vengeance on his brothers, and he had the power to do it. So even a normal, ordinary person can all of a sudden become a monster. How much more so Yosef could have been, and justly so, right? Justly so, but he didn't, and so that shows on his great righteousness that even though he had all this power, he still remained connected to God and humble to the creator of the universe. Okay. Vayamas Yosef died, Pakalachav and all of his brothers, Pakaladorahu, and that whole entire generation. What does it mean, Kaladorahu? Kol Shivim Nefesh. All of the 70 souls, Shalobo Ador, the Kilkul, Gomor, Kol Yameim, that the generation of the Jews did not come. They didn't come to have any doubts or disbeliefs or do any sins until all the tribes died. Now you can ask a question. What do you mean that they all? Well, we see that when there were the 10 plagues, the last plague, after the last plague and the plague of darkness, so it says that 4/5 of the Jews died, because those 4/5 Jews, they didn't want to go out of Egypt. They wanted to stay in Egypt. They didn't mind it. So we see that the Jews, what can you expect from them? The Jews, a lot of them, they lost their connection to God. Upanei Yisrael, the Jewish people, Peru over Yishritzu, they fruitful and they multiplied and they increased and they became powerful very, very much. And it says these 6 indicate that there were 6 children. Women gave birth to 6 children at one time. Peru 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Rashi says, they were giving birth to 6 at one time. 6 children at one time. 6 languages, this corresponds to the 6 children that they were born in. Okay, that's what he says also. So here it says, Yishrutzu, that they Yishrutzu means that they were like fruitful and multiplied. But the word sheretz is also like an impure bug, like a spider or something. So it says after all the 70 souls died, then natu l'darkei shrotzim. Then the Jewish people, they became, how do you say, they became shrotzim. They did sins, ber shachar, etc. They did bad things. This comes to tell you that they were giving birth to 6 at one time, as we said before. Another explanation, take these words, paru v'yishrutzu, these words, paru v'yishrutzu, this is the same gematria, now he's doing what the Baal HaTurim always does. This counts the gematria of 6 shisha b'keres echad. Shisha b'keres echad. Add them up, you'll find out it's exactly the same number, minus 2. And that's the 2, ma'od. That finishes the cheshbon. Just to add the 2 words, ma'od, that comes up to be the gematria of shisha b'keres echad. Vayakam melech hadash, there was a new king on Egypt. Asher lo yadat Yosef, and he didn't know Yosef. Now this is to give the credit to the women, because usually in such terrible conditions, as people have no desire to raise a family. I mean, that's the worst place to raise a family of all. And it says that there were big miracles. It said the women give birth to 6 children at once, and that the children would sink into the ground when the Egyptians came looking for them, and that they would the rocks would give them milk. I don't know how it was, but the fact that when it was, I mean, they went in. You could do some sort of a calculation. They went into Egypt, there were only 70. And when they came out, which was 210 years later, they came out, there was about 3 million people came out. And that was only 1/5 of the Jewish people. So you figure there were, in 210 years, it went from 70 to 15 million. So that means that it wasn't any sort of a normal birth rate over there. There stood up a new king. There's an argument in the Gemara what type of a new king was. Some Rav and Shmuel, one of them says it was a real new king, and one of them said that no, he just made new decrees. And he didn't know Yosef. What does it mean? According to this, that he just made new decrees. He made himself as though he didn't remember anything that Yosef did. Because you have to remember, Yosef saved all of Egypt and he saved the whole world. If there was any power to Egypt, it was only because of what Yosef did. Let's look at the Kli Ykar. What does it mean he didn't know Yosef? He didn't know what happened to Yosef. What happened to Yosef? He thought he could make trouble for the Jews, and that he would go and he would succeed. He didn't remember what happened to Yosef when his brothers tried the same thing. His brothers, they tried all their power to destroy him and to destroy his dreams that he had, but it didn't help them. No matter what they did, all their plans that they made, because the will of God was with Yosef, that it should not only should they not kill him, but that he should rise up to greatness, and the words of and he should save the whole world. And the words of God, that's what exists. So the same thing also with Paro, that he said maybe the Jewish people will increase against the will of God. He said maybe. So he said, and what did God say? He said, Paro said, let's destroy the Jews so that they will not increase. And God said, yes, they will increase. And he thought that he could be clever on them and somehow or other destroy the Jews. After all, they were all his slaves, his servants. But it didn't work, just like it didn't work for the brothers of Yosef. That's what he means. They didn't know at Yosef a new king stood up, that he didn't know what happened to Yosef, how Yosef survived, even though the odds were against him, were 1,000,000 to 1, right? The whole Egyptian government and his brothers, he had no friends whatsoever. Everything they tried to do to the Jews, it happened to them. Like it says, on the head of the enemies comes down the wrath of God. All right. Paro said to his people, Hine, there's the Jewish people. They are many and they are more powerful than us. They are many and they are more powerful than us. Right. He couldn't understand how it could be that the Jewish people, this is a really good one over here, but I want to find this. There it is. It says, there are many that they are increasing, not in a normal way. The nature is that when a woman has a lot of children, she gets very weak and she can't give birth to any more. Learn from the person that has, for instance, twins, right? And that when a woman gives birth to a child more than one, she's tremendously weak. But now, you might think that, well, now they're having so many children, don't worry, the women will get weaker and weaker. And now all of a sudden, we see, no, they're atzum. You see that the Jewish people, that the women, even though they give birth to children, they don't become any weaker. And not only that, the Egyptians should have been stronger than them. But now we see that that the power of the Jewish people does not come from themselves. This is something that's not normal. That's what he says. Yinei Bnei Yisrael, that they are more powerful and strong, and because we kept them alive in the years of the hunger. But now, Yachzik Yisro b'chazaka she'am ta'ana shenidchakma bo lasos lo katov b'neihem. Okay, now we're finished with the Jews. We don't need them anymore. Let's just do with them whatever we want to. They're our servants, says the Kli Ykar ulafir. The rabbis say, Nischak mamo, they said, let's make tricks on him. What the Jewish people says, no, the rabbis say we're talking about, let's make tricks on God. We can say that this mimenu, this refers on a Kodesh Baruch Hu, on God. Like the rabbis say, ki chazaku mimenu, like the spies said in the land of Israel, they didn't want to go in because they said the land is stronger than God. Also, the same thing is also here, it refers to God. What does it mean? That all the power of the Jewish people only comes from God. Now, I know that's the source of the Jewish people. So therefore, let's try to go against God. We'll fight against God. I mean, Paro was the king of the world. He felt he was just, he was invincible. He says, let's go and be wise. Pen year because maybe the Jewish people start increasing too much. And if there's ever a war, then they'll join our enemies and they'll be a fifth column inside. And then they'll leave the land of Israel. They'll leave the land of Egypt. They'll leave the land of Egypt, and we don't want them to do that. Rashi says, Kol haba lashon hachana, means haba, that's bo, means let's prepare ourselves. Kolomar, let's prepare ourselves and be wise. We got to be clever with the Jews. We can't just go and start killing them. We got to be clever. What to do? Why? The rabbis say that they figured we can outsmart God. How? We'll drown the Jews in water. Because God promised, Shelo yavi mabul olam, that he won't bring a flood to the world. They didn't understand. So what did they say? They know that God punishes the enemies of the Jews with the same thing the enemies of the Jews tried to destroy the Jews with. So if we try to burn the Jews, then God's going to burn us. If we try to shoot them or something, then they're going to shoot us. But what about drowning them? God promised He's not going to bring a flood to the world anymore, and we rule the whole world. So let's drown the Jews, and then God already promised He's not going to go against His promise. The problem is they didn't understand that on the world, God promised not to bring a flood to the world, but He did promise not to bring He didn't say anything about bringing a flood on one nation, and that's what He did when He split the sea. So He drowned them. And maybe they're going to go and leave the land of Egypt. It says the rabbis say this is like a person who curses himself. He puts the curse on other people. And in the end, they did become very much, and they did leave the land of Israel. There's another explanation here. Let's see if I can find it. That, all right, not important. Let's go. So Paro put on the Jews tax collectors in order to make them suffer under their burden. And they should build for him Ari Miskanot. It says cities of storehouses for Paro, Pitom and Ramses. Rashi says, they put on the Jewish people Misim, Lashon Mas, Sarim, Shagovim Yam Mas. They would collect from them taxes. What type of taxes? The Jews didn't have anything. What was it? That they would build these cities for Paro, right? You Jews are living here for free. You know what? You have to pay taxes. Okay, what do you want us to pay? Start building. You have to be in the workforce. In order to help the Egyptians. Ari Miskanot. What is Miskanot? It says these are Sochen, means like a storehouse. Pitom and Ram says that these cities were not really fit to be storehouses, and therefore it says go and make them strong like they were, and that they should be fit for use. As they made the Jews suffer, so the Jews increased, and so the Jews multiplied. Israel, and the Egyptians were disgusted by the Jews. Rabbi Sena says they were like thorns in their eyes. And there's one explanation over here that says that there's some sort of a plant, maybe it's one of these fly eaters or something, that you can get like a bramble bush. You can go into it easily, but it says that's why God appeared to Moses in a sneh. A sneh is a bush that has all these briars in it. It says that it's to get into it, you can fall into it quickly, but to get out is very, very difficult, right? Let's say you run, you happen to stumble into one of these branches, so you're inside. Now you want to get out, it's very, very difficult. That's what it means, v'yakutsu. The Jewish people got in there easily. Now, all of a sudden, they became like thorns in the eyes of the Egyptians. And that's what it says. As much as the Egyptians set their heart to make the Jews suffer and to limit their birth rate, God increased them. Ruach HaKodesh, this is who's saying this? The Holy Spirit is testifying. You Egyptians are saying maybe the Jews will get a lot. Let's do something to limit their numbers. And I say that they will become a lot. The Egyptians made the Jews suffer. The Rebbe, by the way, said something interesting from this sentence. It says, the more they made them suffer, the more they multiplied. And the Rebbe said there's no place in the world that the Jews have suffered more and constantly than in Russia. And in Poland and Germany and all these other European countries, even though there was the Holocaust afterwards, but there was years even periods of 100 years, even more, that it was very good for the Jews. They let the Jews go, and the Jews were, they helped the non-Jews, and etc. But in Russia, it was always bad for the Jews. It was never, ever good for the Jews in Russia. Maybe now, but it was never good for the Jews ever. So the Lubavitcher Rebbe said this, he said in 1980 something. He said that because it was always bad for the Jews, it was the worst place. So it could be that there's more Jews in Russia than there are in all of the world put together. But they just don't know that they're Jews. Their mother didn't know she was Jewish, and the grandmother didn't know she was Jewish. But in fact, that's what the Lubavitcher Rebbe said. The more they make them suffer, the more they are fruitful and multiply. And the Egyptians made the Jews work beforech, with hard, back-breaking work. Some people say porach, they says perach. Here, Balaton, perach. In the beginning, Paro said, you Jews, I really like you. Come, let's work together and build these cities of building together. And Paro even made a brick himself. And he said he put it around his neck on a chain. This is the amount I want everybody to make. We'll be friends, and I'll pay you really good. And then they started making bricks. And Paro said, oh, come on, you can do better than that. And of course, we know what happened. They got into this perach, with a soft mouth, it says. With a soft mouth. He tricked them. Some people say perach, that he changed their work every day. And another word is that perach, that they worked and they built buildings and then they destroyed them. So they never really felt they were getting anything. He made their life bitter with difficult work, with cement and with bricks, all sorts of work in the field. Everything he did, they served with porach, with back-breaking work. The Sforno says that that the Jews were a bit in fault, because as the Jews more and more sinned in their thoughts and their deeds and their opinions, as the Jews were considering serving the idols of the Egyptians. And in fact, it says that they did serve the idols of the Egyptians. They went across the sea. So the angel said, what are you driving the Egyptians for and letting the Jews go? They all were serving idols. Like the prophet says, the prophet said, Shikutzi and him. Anyway, so therefore, the more the Jews left God, the worse the work, the worse the hard work became. It says Vayamoru. At that time, Miriam was born. Miriam is from the word mar, because it was difficult. First of all, they made cement, and then Bekolavoda, and then finally they made bricks, and then they told them to do all sorts of bizarre things that they had to do in the field. The Egyptians, the king of Egypt said to the Ivriot, one of them was called Shifra and the other one was called Pua. Shifra says the Mialdot, they gave birth. They were the ones, the midwives. They helped one of them helped give birth, and the other one would speak to the woman to calm her down. Shifra, that was Yocheved. She was the one that helps the child come out. And Pua, that was Miriam, because she was just a young child. Yocheved was her mother. Because she talks to the child like women that mefayaso the tino kabocha, like to try to tell the child it's okay, be quiet, etc. That's Pua also means to scream out, like one. There's two different opinions he brings over here. One of them says that it was Yocheved and Miriam, a mother and a daughter, and the other one says that it was Yocheved and Elisheva. Okay, in any case, Vayomer b'yaledchem. And so Paro said, when you help the Jewish women give birth, and you see them that they're on the Avnaim was like the bed that they're about to give birth on. So if it's a boy, do me a favor, kill him. And if it's a bat, then if it's a daughter, then she can live. Why is this? Because Paro got from his his prophets that there was going to be some sort of a child that was going to depose him. So he said, I'll just get rid of all the children. And in the end, he killed all the Egyptian babies also. But the women, the Mialdot, Shifra and Pua, they feared God, and they didn't do what the king of Egypt said, and they kept the children alive. And we'll talk about this, exactly what this means, God willing, tomorrow. Have a good day with Mashiach, and I'll see you tomorrow at 8:15 in the morning for Chassidut.